And I'm just scrolling through where people are from. So we have several from Winnipeg, we have Halifax, we have Regina, Hamilton, Calgary, Ottawa. This is great. Lethbridge. So this is one of the big benefits of Quebec City, New Westminster, Mahone Bay, Nova Scotia. So that's one of the fun and really big benefits of doing things virtually. So there are some positives about this situation. And with that, I'm going to go to the main reason why you're really all here. There are many ways, for many reasons, that a career ends up going along a particular path. And it may be planned, it may be serendipitous, but whatever the causes are of those zigs and zags that your career follows or will follow, the point we hope to convey tonight is that an architectural education provides us with a great variety of skills that can be applied to many types of careers. It may not necessarily be the sort of conventional architectural career that as a student you might be thinking you're going to use your education for. So tonight we're privileged to have 4 women who have all followed quite varied paths in their careers to date. And we look forward to hearing the hows and whys of those choices and where they've landed, and maybe even what might be to come for them. We'll have all 4 presenters go through their presentations, and then we will welcome questions at the end. And a reminder to please use the Q&A for your questions. And if you, as we go, do have particular questions for particular people, please make sure when you put your question in the Q&A, if it's directed for one particular presenter, to let us know which one you're directing your question for, or whether it's intended as a general question for all 4 participants. And I won't be giving any long introductions to our presenters because, of course, their stories are theirs to tell, and that's really the purpose tonight anyhow. So with no further ado, I'm going to introduce Sandra Korpan, who is currently a project manager with the City of Vancouver. Thank you, Sandra.
Hello, Kate. Thank you very much. I'll start by sharing my screen. And hopefully that comes up for everyone. I'm hoping everyone sees a white cover page, WIA Vancouver.
Yeah, looks good.
Great. All right, so my name's Sandra Korpan. I'm a registered architect here in Vancouver and a LEED accredited professional. And I'm just going to roll along here. There we are. So I'm starting out, I graduated from UBC in 1989. It was Bachelor of Architecture. Prior to that, I was at the University of Western Ontario in London, where I did a degree in art history and history. So shortly after graduation, I had the opportunity to go to Spain. So this is a photograph of myself with Bing Tom, the architect of the Canada Pavilion in Seville, Spain. And almost 30 years later, 2018, we opened the roof garden at the Vancouver Central Library. We worked with local architects, DA Architects, and the original library architect, Moshe Safdie, and the original landscape architect, Cornelia Oberlander. So these 2 projects are approximately 30 years apart and 2 of my favorite projects. So I just wanted to say a word about mentors and role models. This gentleman on the left is William Rohn. I worked for Bill as a student. He was the first office that I worked in Vancouver. It was a summer session, and I did come back and work with him after graduation for a couple of years. I'm still in touch with him today. He's 92 now. Bing Tom, also, I worked for Bing as a student. I saw a building that he designed that I really liked. I wanted to find out who designed that building. And when I learned it was Bing, I called him up, and fortunately I was able to go and work for him. I took a term out of UBC to work at Bing's office and gain some experience. This is a good friend, Melissa Crenshaw, and I met Melissa at the Canada Pavilion. She's a holographer and a wonderful designer, and we have entered some public art competitions together, not successfully, but had a lot of fun along the way. So experience in the private sector, I guess half my career was in the private sector and half has now been in the public sector. So again, just the Canada Pavilion, this was my first taste of project management and being on a construction site. We had a deadline, we had Canadian contractors that built the millwork, we had Spanish contractors install it. There was a lot of activity on the expo site, Japanese pavilion by Tadao Ando being constructed, a bridge by Santiago Calatrava. So it was just a really amazing place to be. And I really discovered that I liked being around construction. So then I returned to Vancouver, wanted to get registered, and worked for a number of small to medium-sized firms over the years on schools, housing, commercial, all sorts of different building types. Also, after hours, I was an instructor at Arts Umbrella. That's a art school for children. So I was an instructor in the architecture classes there, and I also volunteered at the AIBC on their communications board. So then I went to the public. I'm now in the public sector. I work for the City of Vancouver as a project manager in the Real Estate Facilities Department. A few facts about Vancouver for those of you that aren't from here. The City of Vancouver has about 7,000 full-time employees and owns about 700 buildings. So it's a very complex, layered organization. It was declared a reconciliation city by Council in 2013. In 2019, Council declared the climate emergency, and greenest city goal of the city is to lead by example in green building design. So as I'm with Real Estate and Facilities Management, our department was just awarded a leadership award for government by the Canada Green Building Council. That's a great honor for everyone. And I'm in the branch of facilities development. I'm one of 12 project managers, and we're currently managing about 350 million in construction, from very small to quite large, significant projects. We procure consultants and contractors, and we design, bid, build, and as the owner, we operate the buildings, or we work very closely with the operators. So this sketch just shows, again, the design team retained all the phases that we go through in construction. We procure, we construct, and again, the operations. We really try and pay a lot of attention to commissioning our buildings and getting the systems operating well, so that the people that have to operate them for years to come have a good time doing it. So here's design at the beginning, and this isn't obviously the life of the building. So project management, I just wanted to illustrate, as a project manager, one is constantly involved with many different groups, from contractors, design consultants. We have our user groups, our stakeholders, the funders, of course, the public, being a public organization, operations, who ends up taking care of the buildings, decision makers. So it's a fast-paced, dynamic environment. It requires good communication skills, intuition, a lot of empathy, and always trying to anticipate what's coming next. So I just wanted to show a couple of projects that I've worked on at the city. This is the Orpheum. It's a Class A heritage building. People in Vancouver would know it. It's the home of the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra. In 2009 and 10, the summers, the building was closed and we renovated. $6 million in construction over 2 summers. We replaced the 1,700 seats. It's a very large theater. Did lighting and sound enhancements, washroom and dressing room upgrades. And in the summer of 2010, the VSO Music School and the Orpheum Annex was turned over to the city. That was a developer project and given to the city as a density bonus. The architects on this project were Proscenium Architects for the Orpheum and Howard Bingham Hill for the amenity bonus. Gathering Place Community Center in 2015, $2 million renovation to improve the access and enhance the identity of this building. Phased construction, this building's open 365 days a year. It's an amazing place. It's a drop-in center for people. You can get medical and educational services. You can do your laundry. It's got a gymnasium, and in the winter, it serves as an emergency shelter. So the feasibility study for this was with the Korpan Group, and Proscenium Architects were the architects of record. We do a lot of childcare in the facilities department. This is Citygate Childcare, and this is Lord Nelson. This is quite an interesting partnership that has recently happened between the VSB when they build a new school, and as part of their seismic program, the city piggybacks on that and creates a childcare. So this one was by McFarland Marceau. Childcares are very technical projects with very specific requirements. They have to be licensed. Killarney Senior Center.
Sandra, I just wanted to let you know there is 2 more minutes left.
Perfect. I'm just about at the end and I need a sip here. Killarney Senior Center. This was an addition to a community center, existing community center, $7.5 million. Project lead goal, design build contract, lots of meetings with seniors group, and the architects were Ventana, Taylor, Kurtz, and Karskaden. And then finally, the grand finale, certainly at this point, is the Central Library, $18.5 million renovation. We cut off half of the existing green roof to create a green a garden on level 9. We first visited the site in 2012. We turned it over in 2018, so 6 years. We had to cut the concrete roof off. This is a robot that was used. We kept the library open for 3 months during the demolition, which is quite a significant thing. We had to bring a new escalator in through the skylight. Here's Cornelia checking out the soil going in. We had a public art piece by Rebecca Belmore. So finally, here's the garden today. And our chief librarian said, it's a place that brings community together. We're delighted to watch the public taking ownership, visiting in the sun, rain, and even snow. And I was really pleased when I came up here on one very cold November day and saw this fellow sitting out here, because we spent this, a fair bit of time just trying to understand, for example, how deep that overhang, that canopy should be, so that this could actually take place and the garden could be used throughout the year. So that's it. Thank you very much. And I will stop sharing my screen.
That was awesome, Sandra. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Sandra. That's great. And I already have a few questions for you, but I'm going to save them till the end.
I will mute myself.
And next up, we have Katie Henderson, and she is currently a faculty member at BCIT.
Thank you, Kate. And thank you. I'm so honored to share my story of my career. So I'm just going to start sharing my screen here. Bear with me. And hopefully everyone can see it. I'm just going to back up a bit. There, is it at the front now? We can see the timeline?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so if you met me 20 years ago, when I was just finishing my Master's of Architecture at Dal back in 1998, I would never have imagined that I'd be doing what I'm doing today, which is currently faculty at BCIT. For the past 4 years, I've taught in the School of Construction and the Environment, and I may have taught some of you. I see there's a few people in the participants that I think I have seen in my classroom, but I've really loved every day at BCIT, and well, not so much online. Online is definitely not as fun, but hopefully we'll get back to class soon. But my career path has definitely not been a linear path, and you can see this. There's lots of jogs along the way. And when I graduated, I thought I was really on track to kind of have it all, so they say, and you know, have this career and a family, and I quickly learned that it's, you know, everything you want has its challenges. So you know, it's really important to think about what part of the whole is really meaningful and fulfilling to you at that moment, and to really look at those. So I'm going to just go through kind of my transitions and really focus on that, and kind of talk about my motivations, because I think this non-linear journey is actually really typical for many women. And I wish I had known this 20 years ago, but you know, our lives are really dynamic, and there's lots of things that come into our lives that change our track. And this has been, you know, it's a traditionally linear profession. And so how to navigate that, you know, I felt like I was a bit of a fish out of water trying to navigate it. So yeah, I'm just going to try to kind of go through it. So this is, you know, a really big motivation for me. This is my now 12-year-old daughter. She's here constructing one of her many Duplo towers that her and I love to build. And her and my son have just been a huge influence on my career path. And I say that knowing how layered and loaded and complex that statement is. And trust me, I have struggled wholeheartedly with the architecture and work-life balance journey. Because for me, maintaining a career and you know, fulfilling my passion in architecture, but also my passion of raising my kids and being there was also, you know, it was just a constant balancing act, and a real challenge. So I, after graduating with my master's, I moved back home to Vancouver, and I became an intern architect at Merrick. And I started working then at NSDA, Nielsen Dahl Adams, and really loved working at larger firms that offered a lot, but I really wanted to get registered. And so I thought that a smaller firm would really offer a lot of a broader scope of the project delivery. So I moved to Halkier and Associates, which is now Shift Architecture, where I became registered, and I was able to finish a project that I went from start to completion. So that was great. This was my huge learning curve of 3 years of multifamily residential project, and it was. The learning curve was steep, but I really had amazing support from Cam. And during construction of this project, I was very pregnant with my daughter, and it really was the first time I started to see kind of those big and small, you know, challenges of that balance. And you know, whether it was me waddling around 9 months pregnant on the construction site, and just not feeling like I was being taken as seriously as, you know, my team, or it, you know, just thinking about the upcoming maternity leave and like, what does that even look like, and what does that even mean to my career? All those thoughts were going through my head. So I started my maternity leave and was supposed to go back in the fall of 2008. And for those of you who remember the fall of 2008, you'll remember that the recession really hit those small firms very hard. And so I didn't actually have a job to go back to. So I ended up just kind of shifting, and I really loved being a mom, but I also missed architecture, and I missed the creativity, and you know, I wasn't as domestic as I thought I was. So I actually went to teach at Arts Umbrella like Sandra, and it was great. I just loved working with the students and the kids. I was so inspired. These kids came up with just the coolest, like uninhibited, creative projects, and it just kind of filled my passion again. And it really kind of was the first time that I realized that teaching, just that igniting that spark in people, it's so awesome. And I mean, I come from a family of teachers, so it's not a huge departure for me, but I realized that okay, this is a really cool thing for architects. So after I went, when my son turned 1, actually, I really was ready to go back to work full time, and I really missed being in an office. And so I really had the great opportunity to work at Dialogue Design, like a few of the other panelists here. And I was super excited to join the team. The structure at Dialogue is very flexible and really supports a work-life balance. So that helped a lot with the transition. And so for the 4 years I was there, I had the opportunity to lead a multifamily residential project. And I was able to see that from pre-design all the way through construction for 4 years I was there, 4.5. And it was just really humbling, though. It kind of was the first time when I saw people that had graduated from architecture school way after me be far more senior in the office. And I just, it just occurred to me that, okay, it's just going to be a different journey for me, and that's okay. This is a project that I worked on. This is a shoreline project in River District. And I just had to include the coolest shop drawing that I've ever seen, is that we got to spec for the mechanical room for the below grade or below construction level basement. It was for the mechanical room, and it was actually a submarine door. And so that was just the coolest part one of the coolest part of the project. So I thought I would share that shop drawing. So, it was a great project and really good experience, but I also started to see how my role was really taking its toll on my family and myself. And I just started to realize I was missing out on the time with my 2 young kids at the time. So I was at a crossroads again. I knew that I would be leaving a very supportive and flexible and great firm, but and a more traditional career path, which was scary for me. But anyways, I chose to kind of go off on my own, and so I started my own practice. And this was a really, really hard time for me. It was hard to leave Dialogue, and I have to say, I love being home with my kids, but having my own practice was incredibly difficult. It's a lot of work and scary, and it can be incredibly lonely. And you don't have the project team, and so I was really missing people. I think I'm an introvert, but I actually think I'm actually more of an extrovert than I think I am. But so these are 2 projects that I was working on, or they're 2 of the many projects, small residential projects. There's a remote cabin on the left there in Sunshine Coast, and a laneway home in Vancouver. And I did a lot of small residential projects, but I realized that it wasn't totally filling my passion as well. I started to get a bit going against architecture for a bit. So I just remembered how much I loved teaching, and so I reached out, and they were hiring at BCIT, and so I was really fortunate to get a great job at BCIT, where I get to do this, and it's so fun. I get to teach materials and construction, and I get to have fun days with Scott Hine and architectural charrettes and in the design studio, and I get to be around people and also just ignite that spark of learning, and learn right alongside them, because they are learning such amazing things about the technologies of building and construction that are evolving so fast. And so it's so exciting to learn right alongside them. So anyways, I'll just end by saying that I really wish I could go back and tell my 20-year-old self that it's okay to not follow a traditional career path, and having it all shouldn't be the goal. It's more about thinking about what parts of the whole are meaningful. And even though that's super scary and hard, it's also super worthwhile. And yeah, the freedom of choice is overwhelming. But you know, if you just kind of go one step at a time and have faith that you can really affect, I think, the career path at any point and make it yours. And that's my.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
That was great, Katie. Thank you.
And yes, I have to, we have to laugh that we have two themes going here. Well, a few themes going here. One is that several dialogue alumni are presenting tonight. And of course, there's a bit of a theme of names here, and hopefully later it won't get too confusing between the Kate and the Kate and the Katie. But and I see we have an arts umbrella theme going here as well. Anyway, next I'm happy to introduce Maia Lowe, who is another dialogue alumna and who holds the position of studio lead at Human Studio. And I'm kind of hoping that her stories will lead to an explanation about that title of her role at Human Studio now. So here's Maia.
Sure. Let me share my screen. Okay, how's that?
Perfect.
Okay. So my story is actually a lot like Katie's. We just switch around a few details and it's almost identical actually. I work for Human Studio. We're a firm, the firm started in 2017, 3 years ago. And like it says, my title is studio lead. Let me just move to the next slide. So I graduated from UBC in '91 with a bachelor's degree. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was just sort of a default university. I was in a youthful holding pattern. And then my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, we decided to travel around the world. So we traveled through Europe and Asia for a couple of years, actually. And then because of my travels, it started to make sense that architecture was something that I was really excited about. And even growing up, I don't think I ever, as a teenager anyway, ever lived in a house that was fully built. We were always in the phase of building, it seemed. So it seemed like a natural thing. So I applied to Carleton in Ottawa and ended up getting my degree there. And I was older than most of the students because I had kind of taken a long route to get there. And so I graduated when I was 32. And actually in my final year and fifth year, for my thesis presentation, I was practically in labor. So that was sort of a project I had going in my belly at the same time, which was actually a lot of fun. And then after that, we came back to Vancouver, and in the next 10 years, I worked for 2 firms, had another child, and finally got registered in 2010. And soon after that, I left the big firm for a couple of reasons, but also I ran my own firm for 7 years and moved to Victoria. So those are my kids. I show them because they're probably the thing that affected my career the most. You know, I think a lot of firms have probably changed, you know, their human resources. I think offices tend these days to take into account staff fulfillment and satisfaction a lot more than they used to. The firm where I worked was Dialogue, and back when I worked there, I think there were about 40 of us, and I was the only mom. There were a bunch of dads, but most of their kids were older, and so there was really no discussion, there was no conversation about how to make parenthood work. So it was pretty lonely actually, and being an intern of And then being a parent of 2 small kids was really, really challenging. Working late nights, you know, working on weekends was just expected. And, you know, for anyone who's ever been a parent, that's just not really compatible. So it wasn't hard for me, even though I loved the projects I was working on and I loved the people. It wasn't hard for me to leave and move to a new city and start my own office. Although that in itself had its own challenges for sure. So fast forward to 2017. I've been running my own office for 7 years, and it was sort of the perfect situation in terms of trying to be a good parent at the same time. But by then, after 7 years, my kids were sort of university age and they were leaving the house. So I suddenly had quite a bit more freedom on my hands than I was used to. And I heard 2 friends from Dialogue were starting their own office. So the light bulb went off, because before this, I was also thinking of maybe expanding my office. And so I started to think about all the different things that I wished I had in my previous job, you know, support for parents and all those other things that make it easier, particularly for women to not stunt their careers. So I took the ferry over to Vancouver, and I took them out for drinks, and I laid out my vision of how I thought a firm ought to be, particularly in terms of firm culture. And it turns out we had this perfect alignment. And the evening went really well. And I've been with Human Studio ever since. And really, I guess my primary role is to be the guardian of studio culture. You know, I do a bunch of other things too. Kind of wear a lot of different hats, but that's probably my most important role in the office. So what that means is the things that we, you know, talked about, the kind of place that this office needs to be. We have a pretty flat hierarchy, even though of course every project has the project architect and that kind of process hierarchy. We don't have the kind of office where you know, the partners have an office in the side, and on the side of the floor plan, the partners are sitting in and amongst all the other staff, and quite possibly right next to the student. Because we're also a young firm, we also have the opportunity to harness everybody's experience and knowledge to reinvent some of the systems that are kind of inherent in firms. So we're reinventing a lot of old systems and making them work for us and the way we want to practice architecture. We ask everyone to get involved in everything from hiring to even voting for which projects we go for sometimes. Our staff room is in probably the nicest spot in the floor plan. It's our shared space, which makes it our most valuable space. We try to recognize that though we're mostly all the same, we all have different needs, and that's just fine. You know, if you get called home because your kid's broken out in a terrible rash, then that's fine. That's just what you have to do. And all our equipment is mobile, so you can just grab your laptop and go home and work in the evening, or just do what you need to do to you know, be awesome staff, but also be awesome parent. So, you know, working hard, playing hard, that's all really important. We ask everyone to be involved in who we hire, and it has to be a unanimous vote. Everyone gets to look at the resumes and put their 2 bits in. And the last thing really is trust. We trust everyone in our office to make the right decisions for themselves. So, you know, if you have to take a few days off because you need a break, then we trust everyone to make those decisions for themselves. And we don't count the number of vacation days or anything like that. where we really try hard to work as a team, where everyone can make the decisions for themselves and in turn probably benefit the office the best way that they can. So these are the things that we talked about when I approached my friends from my old firm. And so now we have moved into a new office. Actually, we've kind of moved here during COVID.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say that there is 2 more minutes left.
Okay, I'm just done now. So we're kind of spread all out because of COVID. But those are the folks in my lovely office. So thanks, guys.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Maia.
Wonderful. And lastly, I'm pleased to introduce Kate Busby, who's currently a partner with Faulknerbrowns Architects. Over to you, Kate.
Hi, everyone. All right. So I'm sure a lot of designers out there can relate to this, but I grew up in the prairies in a place that wasn't exactly considered a mecca for design. I come from a very creative family, but until I found my way into architecture school, the built environment wasn't really something I spent a lot of time thinking about, but I did want to study architecture. And there wasn't an architecture school in Edmonton near where I grew up. So I went to school abroad. And as you know, going to university abroad can be really expensive. So I spent really every school break that I could working at firms. And that included some Christmas breaks. I didn't have the opportunity really to travel extensively prior to going to university. So I applied for every available travel grant that was available. And that enabled me to fly to Europe and work in Oslo, and also study in Mexico City, which are both really formative in terms of exposure to great architecture and different worldviews. And then when I graduated architecture school, I went to Dalhousie as well as Katie. I followed someone's really good advice just to shoot high. And so I applied to some of my favorite architecture firms in the whole world. And I landed at O'Donnell and Toomey Architects in Dublin. And it's such a strong design firm. And it was really the greatest gift in the world to work with such a talented group of people. We're learning about placemaking in a city that's just steeped in history. And then these are some of the projects we worked on. About 18 months later, there was a massive economic crash, 2008 again. And when work dried up in Ireland, I wasn't quite ready to leave Europe. And there was work in France. So I moved there for 2 years. And I got a chance to work on a lot of master planning projects, large scale sports projects like soccer stadiums, and planning for the Euro Cup. And I also got to travel extensively and visit a lot of architecture, which I feel is massively invaluable to my professional career as well. In 2010, my husband and I decided to move back to Canada, and we moved to Vancouver. I got registered and I worked really at 3 Vancouver firms as a project architect. As a project architect, I really, really enjoyed being able to work on a real wide variety of typologies, so sport and rec, libraries, other community buildings, but equally working on multifamily and commercial projects. And being back in Canada, I also found it much easier to get involved in community opportunities, like serving on boards and committees, that type of thing. Personally, I'd always imagined at some point in my career that I would be a business owner, like my parents are. But somehow after completing my master's and internship, and then all the other life things we do, like marriage and property purchase, all of a sudden I found myself at home with a baby and then another baby. And by that point, the barrier to entry for establishing a firm seemed pretty high. And to be honest, it didn't really actually seem very possible for me, at least for the foreseeable future. And then my friend Paul, who's a partner at Faulknerbrowns Architects in Newcastle, UK, got in touch. And we'd known each other since about 2012. And for personal reasons, his family had decided to move to Vancouver permanently. And so over many, many coffee dates, we hatched a plan to really bring some of the European design that we were both familiar with to BC. And to do that by opening a Faulknerbrowns office here in Vancouver. It took about 9 months of meetings with accountants and lawyers and our partners in the UK. But in July 2019, we launched Faulknerbrowns Architects Vancouver. Over the last 16 months, we've hired staff, we've moved offices, we've done work all over the province, and we've even expanded into doing some work in Alberta. Really, the impetus behind our startup here in Vancouver was to fill some gaps in architecture scene that we saw as potentially in need of improvement, that we saw Faulknerbrowns really excelling at. Since launching the firm, we've been able to do some really exciting work in sport and recreation, one of my loves, and master planning. And now we're tackling some exciting work in multifamily and also library projects. And in the short-term future, I think there's also some exciting opportunities in higher education and mixed use. And those are two and that we're really good at. And I think a lot of challenges in our industry. Oh, so we're cutting out, aren't we?
Yeah, we lost your, so backtrack a few sentences.
Okay, yeah. So really, I'll just move on to this slide. So right now, the future seems filled with a lot of challenges. In our industry, building a favorable reputation as a firm that gives confidence to prospective clients, it takes a lot of time. We are in the midst of a global pandemic, climate crisis, and we're just beginning to tap the surface of massive racial and societal inequity. And on top of all that, being a new business owner, everything just feels pretty daunting for a whole variety of reasons. But that being said, I'm extremely proud of the work that we've accomplished over the last year. And I'm really grateful for the projects we have and the relationships that we've built. And I really believe in our mission that we can really do better for our communities through design. So that's where I'm, that's my goal for the foreseeable future. So I would say, like many of the other presenters today, you wouldn't say my professional career has been particularly linear. I've worked across Canada and Europe in offices in a range of all sizes, which I'm also very grateful for. And I think really having confidence in taking on these opportunities as they arise has just been a theme throughout my career. And it's actually led me to my current role, where my team is building a new firm. And we're just starting from the ground up, and we're really just getting started. So I just wanted to thank you for having me here today. And I think everyone's probably seen more than enough slides, but thank you very much for listening in.
It was beautiful, Kate. Thank you so much. Hey, let's open it up for.
So yeah, so thanks to all our panelists. That was wonderful, and hopefully has produced lots of ideas and questions. And I think, Kimia, this first one that Maia actually answered on the side, it's worth putting up there for everybody to.
I was just gonna say, I think it's a very, very good question, and I do agree with everything that they've said. So I'm just gonna read it out loud. So there was a question, this question is for Maia. I really appreciate hearing the stories of women in architecture who have navigated growing a family alongside establishing a career. What advice would you have for women entering the IAP program who are simultaneously trying to start a family? It seems there is still a 5-year window to complete CRB hours, or there is a penalty. I am 31 and I'm just starting IAP with the SAA. So Maia, I know you've answered. Instead of reading your answer, I'm just going to pass it on to you so maybe everybody can hear your answer.
I actually don't know where to read the answer. Can you read it for me?
Yeah, for sure. So it will be challenging, but if you are working log hours, it's not easy juggling the two. But unless you want to stop working, then you might as well log your working hours. Also, I work hard to develop a network of support, other parents, family, neighbors, friends, etc., to develop a system of like-minded parents who can all support each other.
Yeah, I guess what I meant was, you know, when I was a mom, I guess I made the mistake of kind of staying by myself and being alone. And I was alone in the office as a mom, but I certainly wasn't alone in the industry. But, you know, if I had worked, I think, harder to, and I think social media these days would really help with that, to find other parents who might occasionally need help if their child is sick, or even just to commiserate over with a glass of wine to talk about how hard your life is. You know, all of those things and everything in between would probably be really helpful. So you don't have to do it by yourself.
And do our other mothers on the panel have anything to add?
I agree with Maia, just to keep logging the hours too, like whatever you can do to get that in, you know, whatever, just keep going.
I think the intent behind having a 5-year window is really to expedite the process. I would say across Canada, many of the jurisdictions have worked really hard to reduce the barriers to entry to architecture for young architects. And there's a lot of volunteers that went into, you know, a lot of volunteer work that went into developing the EXAC. And for anybody who went through the NCAR process, they can attest that they're really trying to reduce, you know, some of those hurdles that it is to, and really streamline it into something that's focused, that's relevant. I mean, I don't want to say like you guys have it so easy, but it's a benefit, and I mean they're really trying to make it easier for you to get it out of the way if having a family is something you want to have in the future, or if you do have a family, make it easier and actually possible to happen. You know, it's no small feat though. They're trying to do it while having a family.
Thank you so much. Anybody else has anything to add? We do have another, actually that's not a question, it's there is a thank you ladies, and there is some questions coming on, so I'm just going to read them out loud. Some of them might just be notes, not questions. Monica said, an inspiring session. I am 3/4 done with my IAP and have a kid, and it feels so hard right now. What advice, another question from Merceditas, I'm hoping that I'm pronouncing that correctly. What advice would you have for immigrant architects? I am in the IAP building, my local experience, and age is catching up. I am also a mom. So who wants to take that question for answering regarding immigrant architects?
Well, I mean, I guess I could just say creating a network of people around you as much as possible that are going through the same thing, whether you're going through your just gathering hours or studying for your exams or for your oral review. I think that's really, really important. So, and honestly, through social media, that was something that didn't exist before. You can meet new people that are going through the same thing. And I think that's a great resource. I don't know if, and it doesn't sound like anybody was a parent before. I mean, I guess Maia, you were a parent while you were, while you were going.
You went on mute.
Yeah, I didn't hear the last two words there.
Yeah.
Sorry to call you out, but you were a parent while you were going through the process, because I wasn't a parent when I was going through the process. So I have.
Yeah, I mean, well, when we heard of the exact process, which was really new, it was a hallelujah. It was so much easier, and we could get it done all at once. About 4 of us in our office did it together, so we had our little study group. It saved me, honestly.
I'm on mute now. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Kate B and Maia. I'm going to go to the next question. Theo is asking for the whole panel. What advice do you have for students who are gearing up to enter the industry in these tough economical times? As women who have been in leadership roles at firms, what would you be looking for in an applicant's resume/portfolio?
I can answer that because I do deal with sort of the first line of resumes that come in. One of the things that I'm always surprised about are resumes that come in that really only talk about the candidate and haven't done any research on the office. So that's one thing, is if you're applying to an office, know that that might be the right office for you because of this, this, and this. So, you know, when I get a generic cover letter, I really don't read much past the first paragraph, honestly. And the other thing is, tell me what excites you. You know, I need to know a little bit about who you are and what excites you, because especially in a small office, it really matters. If I think you'll be happy in our office, it's not just whether we'll be happy with the candidate, but whether the candidate will also be happy in our office. So I need to see a glimmer of personality. And then I also need to see, quite honestly, really good graphics and you know, a passion for the projects that were worked on.
I'm just going to read out a couple of questions that are showing up in the chat.
Can I add to that?
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
just also wanted to say something. Yeah.
Really, I mean, well, I'm looking for a variety of experience. You know, I don't want to just see you know, models. I want to see drawings. I want to see you can do graphic design, that you can you know, show me that variety. And even if it's not just in your resume, it's when you come to the office, like, don't bring, there's no such thing as not enough content to bring to an interview. Like, I want to see where your breadth lies. If you're a student starting out and you don't have work experience, show me a variety within your project experience from school. And also talk about what you can offer the firm. Like, we hear a lot about like what they want to get out of the firm, but we want to hear what you can get out of it, you know, what you can bring us. And graphic sensibility is very, very key in offices that are design focused for sure. Everybody comes from a variety of backgrounds. You really got to work with what you got. You know, if you have connections, work those connections. If you have parents that are graphic designers, get them to help you with your portfolio. You know, whatever you've got, you got to work with it.
Thank you so much, Kate B. Kate G, are you going to be reading questions, or do you want me to go ahead?
Did you have something to add to this current discussion?
No, I just saw
Okay.
that Kate B wanted to say something, so I was about to say it.
So yeah, so there's a question for Katie, asking about the requirements that BCIT or other universities have for a person joining the teaching staff.
Okay, yeah.
Holds an architectural degree from Mexico with an MSc from Nottingham University and 15 plus years of international architectural experience. And some teaching experience in Dubai.
That's great. Yes. I don't actually know the prerequisites for, I think you have to have a minimum of a master's degree. And if you are a registered, there's, registered of I think for the architectural science, you have to be a registered architect, but I'm not sure, but definitely master's. Which
I
it
guess
looks
one
like.
challenge is that what is like in Canada, the master's degree is the professional degree, but I think in some countries, the professional degree may be a bachelor degree. So I don't know if that makes a
Yeah,
difference.
yeah. So, yeah, I'm not sure then,
Yeah.
but you should apply. If you're interested in teaching, it's great.
Thank you.
Okay,
Over
okay.
back to you, Kenya.
Okay, so this question is very long. I haven't read all of it. It might be relevant to the previous question, so I'm just going to go over it. And if we have answered it, please let me know. My question is about being a recent immigrant in Canada and working as a registered architect here. I believe a lot of women come to Canada with a professional degree and a lot of experience as a professional architect outside Canada. However, when we arrive here, we realize it's almost starting from scratch. That's true. Canada and US don't recognize professional degree abroad, or it's really hard for them to do it. I understand AIBC has a career path for international architects, but it's a long and expensive process, especially for those who just arrived in Canada. What are your thoughts on how to help those immigrant architects? So this is a little bit different.
Well, I mean, I think one thing to understand is that a lot of the work we do doesn't require registration. While I would always recommend the registration route, and it was kind of the case for many women practicing, that they didn't get registered, but they kind of did the same jobs as architects working. And it's the same thing for technologists. There's lots of people working. So I guess it's recognizing, is that something you want to pursue? Because professional qualifications is just one route to practice. If you do want to own your own firm and work over a certain size of project, it's a requirement.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kate. Anybody else has anything to add to that, or shall I go to the next question? Next question. Okay. So Elaine is asking, first just saying thank you, ladies, for the wonderful presentations. My question is for Kate Busby. What advice would you give for women who are thinking, sorry, just the writing, I need to fix it. What advice you would give for women who is thinking if starting up our own practice is really a good idea? So I'm just reading it out loud. So if you have any advice for women that want to start their own companies, basically, she's asking you. And then she has a second question, so I'm going to go over both of them. How do you balance your role as a mom and a design-oriented firm, and an owner of that firm?
So I mean, really, I would say, why do you want to run a practice, and what type of projects do you want to work on? I think, when I was saying about barriers to entry, the type of projects, the size of projects that I work on have always been pretty big. I have worked on some small projects, but that hasn't been the bulk of my experience. So in terms of starting an office and trying to get big projects, that felt like a bit of a barrier. If you can find a partner, and I would say this, like my twin brother is a business owner as well, like he has a partner that is the balance of everything that he isn't, and it makes your life so much easier. I think that's really key. And for me, that kind of ties into that second question. I have two great partners. I have a partner in life and a partner in business. My partner in life, my husband, is incredibly supportive. I agree with Sheryl Sandberg's assertion that if you want a professional career and a family, who you choose as your partner is really probably the most professional decision, or most important professional decision you can make. And then my business partner, is on the same page with me. He has kids. He recognizes that as well. And then outsourcing. I don't know how anyone did it before grocery delivery and all of the other things that we can do to outsource and how do people do banking? Balancing your life. Being an adult is hard enough. Being a business owner is hard, and having a family is hard. But just make your life as easy as possible. But that's being a business owner is really about establishing connections, and I mean, there's so many different ways. I mean, Maia also is very involved, obviously, in the running of their office, so she might be able to you know, and she was involved at the beginning of starting there. So I'd be interested to hear her perspective as well.
Sorry, I was reading all these questions on the side and I kind of wasn't listening.
The question was about basically as a mom and somebody that wants to start their own firm. So like having that balance, having that support. Kate B, what, did I miss anything?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, you know, I would say that running your own firm, on the one hand, it's great because you have the freedom to not work when you don't want to. But then on the other hand, if you actually want to make some money, you have to work really hard. So you might find yourself working at 2 a.m. because you wanted to spend the day with your kids, and it's great that you have the freedom to make that decision, but it doesn't actually make your life easier. It just gives you flexibility. And I would also encourage anyone to do that if they have actually enough experience from working in an office, because you do need quite a bit of knowledge and experience to be convincing to a client. And ideally, you have enough of a repertoire of projects that you've worked on, of the kind of projects you want to work on, so you have a portfolio to support what you want to do. So it's not any easier. It's you're transferring one problem for another problem, but it may be a better problem.
Okay, thank you so much, Maia. All very valuable points. So I'm going to go to the next question. And this question is actually for Sandra, I believe. Yes. So Nancy's saying, great panel discussion, broad experience and stories, very inspiring. Question for Sandra. Working in the civic arena, how much do you engage with the public? Or is that more what the planners do and you are at the project implementation end rather than the outreach end? In other words, is there public engagement during your process at all?
Yes, there is public engagement. For example, on the Killarney Senior Center project that I showed, we had an open house. So we did have members of the public coming to the open house. So with our larger projects where planning is involved and open to the public, we absolutely will work with them, with citizens. Yeah, otherwise we get information through the planning department and then we respond to that. So yeah, that's my response.
Hi, Sandra, while we have you on board, I have a question for you, and that is, what made you decide to go from an architectural practice to working for the city?
Yeah, well, yes, I was finishing up a school with Hotzenbacher, Little Flower Academy. I think it was just coming to an end. And I just asked myself, okay, do I want to dig in for another couple of years for another long-term project? Or do I want to go and try a different experience? So to be honest with you, when I went to the city, it was on a temporary contract. I thought I would just go and see the other side for, you know, a couple of years, a year or two, find my way around, meet a bunch of people from different organizations, etc. I never imagined, again, as everyone else has sort of said, that 14 years later, I would be here, and I really enjoy it. It's been a great fit. So I thought I would just go to the city for a couple of years, and then I wanted to start my own firm. So here we are. That's how things go.
Great, Sandra. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so the next question to Kate Busby. Zhenya is asking, I actually have something to add to that for Kate. Please share what kind of new company you are going to build. So shall I add my question on top of it? Because it might be a little bit related to that. Sure. So when you were showing your slides, beautiful graphics, by the way, I was thinking, you mentioned that you saw a lack of some elements in the design and the architecture world, since you've basically done a lot of work in Europe and, you know, other parts of the world like Mexico City here and there. So what was it that caught your eye? Because I'm an immigrant, so for me to also come here, it was a very big gap seeing the difference between the architecture from Europe and, you know, like kind of like Asia and all of that. So what was it that caught your eye? Like, what made you want to go for it like the most?
Well, I mean, I guess I was focused on some of the things that we could do in practice in terms of our processes, and how we work, how we build our offices, from our BIM strategy all the way to the way that we master plan. And I mean, I can see a lot of areas that that the planning department could touch on making some of those changes, but I mean, I'm focused on in practice. I'm very, but like our office has two offices, one based in Newcastle and one based in Vancouver. And that's our structure. But for the moment, that we have this Canada UK connection, and this office doing really good work in the UK and all over Europe, tapping some of that experience. So I have a partner or an associate on each of my projects here who's tied to the project and who's kind of feeding us that content. So and doing design reviews and providing oversight and teaching our staff here, and then vice versa. Some of our staff here is working and you know, the partners as well are working on projects in the UK. So it's creating that cross-pollination is just an exciting project for me. I mean, I don't really want to call out anything specifically, but I can say, I would say we have expertise in elite level sport and pairing that with community sport, which I think is really exciting. I think we're doing really exciting things in net zero and low energy building design. And those are just kind of two areas that I'm very excited in bringing to Vancouver, so, and bringing to the province and bringing to Western Canada. So thanks.
Okay, thank you so much, Kate. So next question from Rosa. Thank you all for your lovely presentations. My question is general. I need advice from all of you successful and strong women with different backgrounds. We are in a multicultural society. Many of us came here as immigrants and took us a while to find our path. Some of us started our career life and started from scratch. This means going back to school and graduating much later than others. We are experienced in different fields, but we are new in architecture. It is tough to compete in the job market, not because of the lack of education, but because of many other factors like age, lack of social connection, and more. What advice do you have for us? Is there any way that without employment, we can fulfill AIBC requirements? Do you see a need for this? I believe some parts of it might have been answered, but there are some parts like about without employment and AIBC requirements. Maybe some of you can talk about that. Anybody knows, has any advice on that? Or Kate G, you actually, you might also know about like the AIBC requirements and how it works with the employment and the background.
You do need the work experience to be able to become a registered architect. That's pretty essential. So I don't think there's really a way around that. I think there may be some firms out there that will take you on as an unpaid intern for a little bit, and that could help to get some local experience. Some firms just out of principle will not do that because they feel that that's sort of unfair really to be benefiting from your work without paying you. But there are certainly some firms that will. And so that's, I suppose, one way to start to get a little bit of local experience. And I know it is really hard getting that first job, especially right now, doesn't help at all. But then as Kate Busby mentioned, you know, you can be working in architecture without being registered. If you're working as an employee, you don't need to be registered. So that's another thing to consider.
I mean, obviously the challenges of coming to Canada and working as an immigrant and having maybe a second, speaking English as a second or third or fourth language, I've worked in other languages as well, and I can see one of the exciting things about working in architecture is that you actually have that ability to contribute to an office. So I wouldn't, I wouldn't undervalue your skills that you have. And I would probably give the same advice that I would to anyone else who feels like they're starting at the beginning of their career, is to really think about where your assets are and highlight those in the best ways possible, and look at the firms that you're applying to. Like, try to find connections. I mean, when I applied to HCMI, I sent my portfolio to Karen Marler because she had an association with Tons, my school, and you be strategic about how you apply to firms, and be honest about whether their work aligns with yours, and try to see what those things are. And like Maia said, like, draw attention to those things. You're looking at doing work here, or you're working on a project here. I speak that language. Whatever it is, you can highlight what your background is and where your strengths are. That's all I could say. I mean, it's kind of the same exact advice for anyone who's just trying to get a job, trying to get a start.
I would also say, think outside of just architecture firms. For example, maybe you go work with a contractor for a year as a project coordinator, a municipality. There are other options to get some construction experience of some sort that then will allow you to have familiarity with the Canadian environment more. So not just simply architecture firms. You might need to do something different to begin with.
Thank you so much, Sandra. That's very true.
I'm just seeing one note in the chat saying, a woman saying, I'm also an immigrant and in the intern architect program. I just want to share that I have found the process to be helpful. So do persevere. It provides real, credible, and practical working knowledge. I found my colleagues to be very supportive. I love learning, and discovery of the parallelism of my past experience with the Canadian way is exciting. So don't feel too discouraged.
Yes, correct. Okay, great. So the next question, I believe that would also be almost for everybody. What advice do you have for a mother trying to get back to work in an office, but who is not into technical work anymore? Also, because she's obviously a bit of a dinosaur in CAD, how to present yourself, which jobs to apply for?
I can take that one for now. Being in a similar situation, if one doesn't stay technically involved these days, it's really easy to very quickly become a dinosaur. But there are other things, that people can do. There are other ways of having expertise in an office. You could look into becoming a passive house designer. You could become a code consultant, and you can do that in an architecture office potentially. So there are lots of other things that you can do other than just, being a CAD operator. For sure.
I'll just add to that, just because you said passive house, and I'll just plug the BCIT's passive house tradesperson course. There's a 5-day passive house tradesperson course. It's not cheap, but it is a really good way to kind of understand all about building passive house and technical knowledge. And I think that could be really applicable right now, just to look at net zero and all the energy code requirements. So things like that. I agree with you, Maia, that kind of broadening more of the technical and energy requirements of a building. I mean, I just think buildings are just becoming more and more complex. And so understanding all of the requirements, CAD is just one of the many things that you need to, deliver a project.
Thank you, Katie. Anybody else has anything to add? Okay, great. So the next question is for Sandra. You presented a lot of renovation / adaptive reuse projects.
Mhm.
What is the City of Vancouver's approach to heritage conservation? Also, I'm wondering to what extent are you involved in the design aspect of a project?
Mm.
I was actually also wondering about that too.
There is a heritage department at the City of Vancouver. Yeah, heritage is very, very important. Within Canada, we have we have Class A, Class B. There's all sorts of measurements that go in. There's experts that create all sorts of reports that are attached to building projects. So yes, a lot of our, as I said, the city owns 700 buildings. That means that we do have a number of new builds, but we are constantly renovating buildings. The library, for example, is 25 years old. So there were definitely some surprises on that project. And the second question was about, yes, our design involvement. Yes, we are involved, absolutely. A friend of mine told me, an architect, when I become a project manager, you need to put your pencil down. Well, yes, I do try and sort of, stand back, but we're all designers. In fact, our team, our 12, most of us, we all have architectural training. A number of us, most of us, I guess, are registered architects. So yeah, we're very vested in design. We love design. So our consultants, come up with the initial designs and options, et cetera. And then we take feedback, for example, from the librarians, the users of our projects, and then help to find those solutions. So yeah, but put the pencil down. We're not the designers.
Great, thank you so much, Sandra. So the next question is actually very interesting. For high school students interested in architecture, how could they start getting involved in the design community, and what advice would you give them? Love that question. It's a little bit of a hard question as well, but.
I'll just jump in there. Right off the bat, make sure you learn how to draft. It's super important. Learn the language, learn the communication skills, learn about buildings. Every opportunity you can, go look at buildings. Yeah, just get out there and familiarize yourself with the environment. And then, of course, there's Arts Umbrella, which has classes starting at age 5 right up until teens. So they've got some really awesome programs. If you're interested, I would definitely check that out.
I'll also add just some advice that was given to me when I was in high school and really wanting to go into the field and loving architecture, was to just sketch all the time. Whenever you can, get a sketchbook and it really, it just practices like how you see the world, and it slows down your brain to like observe what you see. And I think the more you can really take in the world around you and really see it in a different and slower way, the better you will at, becoming a future architect designer.
I would also add something to that. There are a lot of nonprofit organizations such as WIA, such as, for instance, I don't know, NEWH, or Women in Construction. There's lots of different organizations that they have great events, and I believe there is a lot to learn in there and understanding if that's actually the right path or not. So that's how I actually chose my path, like by watching other people. So I think that's a very good way. And fortunately here in Vancouver, there is a lot of them happening now online as well. So it's a very good opportunity to join them. Okay. Sorry, I'm going to go to the next question. Thank you for the awesome presentation. Do any of the firms allow for the students to shadow their work and get a grasp of the field? I'm currently a student and I'm looking for some experience.
We're a very new office, so we haven't had any students shadow us, but that is something that we do. I mean, we wouldn't do unpaid internships, but I think job shadowing is a great way to get a sense of what an architect does. And I did it myself when I was a high school student, even if you're at BCIT or studying elsewhere. Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. Learn about what you actually do in that role before you jump into it. I think it's always a good idea, and it's something that coming in for a day or a week is something that I've seen happen in many offices, and it's very typical. So it's worth asking. The best way is actually to try to reach out to somebody that you have a personal connection to, a friend of a parent or somebody you have a personal connection. It's an easy way in.
And I'll just add quickly to that, just if you can also shadow and get on a construction site and shadow somebody doing site visits, or any way you can get on a construction site, I think that is the best way to learn. There's really no sense in drawing anything you're not sure what you're drawing. So like the more experience you can get of seeing how a building is actually put together from the ground up. So if there's any shadowing opportunities on the site, I would suggest that.
Yes. Okay, great. So I'm going to go to the next question. Kathleen is asking a question for Sandra. Was there a big difference in work culture and dynamics with shifting your career path from working in private to public sector?
Well, the city of Vancouver is an awesome employer. It's, I think, one of the 50 best companies in wherever. It's a very supportive environment. There are a lot of women in our department. So I think that makes the organization a very rich place to work. And so, yeah, I recommend it.
Hey, great. Thank you so much, Sandra. So the next question is from Wendy. I'm going to go a little bit quicker to the question. Basically, she's also saying that she's a new mom with a 1-year-old, and she's in IAP, and she's working part-time right now to balance her life and work, and she wants to go back to normal. And her question is, somehow I don't feel it really fits me. Do you have any suggestions which kind of firm I should be looking for, or any other position related to our background which may have better time flexibility?
I guess I can say that all firms are different, and it's a little bit difficult to know what a firm's going to be like by looking at their website and that kind of thing. So I would say get involved even in organizations like Women in Architecture, and just start talking to other people, and start talking and finding out by word of mouth on what people's experiences are in different firms, because that's really the most accurate way to find out what a firm's going to be like. But that's a tough one. Sorry, Kate, I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. I mean, I have really little kids right now. And I have a lot of friends that have really little kids. And so it's been really interesting seeing everyone kind of go back to work and make these different, life changes happen. Part-time can actually be harder, I think, sometimes than full-time, depending on how many days a week. Like if you're working 4 days a week, you probably end up working 5 days a week, but in 4 days a week. Everyone says being a parent sometimes, most moms would say that they became more efficient after they became parents. Like if you have a deadline, you have to go pick up your kids at 4:30, you get it done. Like it just happens. Like that's the really cool thing. I think you have to be an agent for yourself. No one is looking out for you except you when it comes to your professional career. So you have to speak out and make sure that you're getting what you need, and then find a way to make that happen. And everyone has different needs and desires and willingness to work. But if you don't express yourself, you'll get yourself into a position where you're working more than you want to, or on projects that you don't want to. And it's hard. It's hard when you're not the one they get to make decisions on what you're working on. But really, I think if you have conversations with your employers, if anything, for parents, COVID has highlighted the challenges of working and taking care of children, and elder care as well. Like it's a burden that probably is disproportionately burdened by women. But there's a lot of men out there that are dealing with it as well, and it's been highlighted. So work is different now as well. Like we're working, from different places. Like the city of Vancouver, how many people are actually at work? Like how often do you go in? Like it's a new world, and I'm hoping that we can massage that and make that work for parents better. But we have to talk about it to make it happen.
I think, one thing that you could also ask if you get an interview in the firm where you might like to work is just ask how many people in the office have kids. Like that'll tell you right away if it's a place where people like to stay and work.
That's true. Yeah. Great. So the next question for Sandra, how much creative input do you have in your role? Do you miss doing design work? Well, you kind of answered a little bit of the first one, but.
And another question for Sandra as well. May as well hit them both at once. What advice would you give to those who would like a career path to work for the city, besides looking for the job offers there?
Can you check that as answered, Kate? Because I don't think it was the next one.
Okay. So sorry, the first question was just about how much creativity is in our position.
And also how much you miss it.
I'm sorry?
And also, do you miss
opportunity? Right, yeah. Okay. Yeah, creativity. I mean, it's a funny thing, isn't it? Because I'm an architect, my colleagues are architects. We can't help but sort of design the project as it's going along. We do have to stand back though, because we are not the designers, but yeah, there's creativity. I don't hesitate to suggest the way that a problem might be solved. I'll sketch something up, I'll send it off, and then the design team will work on that and bring back different options, and again we'll analyze that. So I think being architects and being project managers, it's a really just fantastic mix, because we empathize with architects, we've been through it, we understand how difficult the profession is, and and there is that respect. It's very important to have that respect for the designer and not take over the design or anything, but certainly to nudge it along and contribute to it. So I hope that I do that, and I hope that my colleagues do that as well. As far as advice, I think that being a project manager, I don't think that it's something to do right after you graduate. I really think you need the experience. You need to have been on the site. You need to have been in an office. I just think you'll bring so much more to the role, and you'll enjoy it a lot more. It's keeping all the balls in the air, and so you need to have a good sort of very strong base of experience, I think, to bring to the role. So just get your experience and don't apply right out of school. I'd say go work for some time first.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Sandra. So the next question is a little bit different in the path of the other questions. What are your thoughts on bullying in workplace? How could it be prevented? How should it be addressed? I'm not sure if that would be as relevant, but anybody has anything in their experience that wants to share?
I would say it definitely should not be tolerated. And if you feel that you are being bullied, you should definitely go speak to a superior. And if you don't get some sort of either resolution or discussion about it, then it might not be the right office for you. But honestly, without knowing the context of the situation, it's a very difficult question to answer.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Maia. I'll go to the next question. Did any of you ladies ever consider landscape architecture in your career path? Anybody ever thought of that?
No, I kill everything. It's amazing. This is alive.
I'm the same. Yeah, I can't keep anything alive, but I think it's an amazing, I just in awe of anybody that can design landscape. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I'd like to speak to that just briefly. I did used to think that if I were to go back to school, that's something that I would love to study, and partly because I just love the relationship of the architecture with the landscape architecture. So to be able to understand that more strongly and work both together in a more unified way, I think would be really interesting.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much, Kate. So the next question, thank you very much, ladies, for sharing your experience. I'm not sure I understood correctly. Does the AIBC registration path through IAP have a time limit to log hours? Thanks.
I can maybe, I don't know that it's formalized, but I have heard there used to be this 5-year window, and I don't think it's anything formal anymore, but I have heard over the years a few people that have, for example, if their contracted min experience was from many years ago, they were required to do some more. So I'm not sure that it's there are any written rules about it, but it seems to still somehow be out there.
Okay, great. Jala is asking maybe a better solution for the barrier that immigrants face. Sorry, that's not a question, that's a comment. So let me go to the next one.
I think that's an interesting comment. The City of Vancouver is actually now tracking when we put in proposals what percentage of our staff ratio is immigrant, which is interesting because our office is 50% at the moment, including my partner. Looking at other kind of diversity initiatives, and I applaud that. Like, I think it's great. Right now that data is being collected, creating requirements. That's kind of another level, but it kind of makes you really think when you're putting in that's something that's being considered in our proposals. So that's great.
Okay, great. The next question, I'll actually keep it for the end, because since it's a student event, I just want to ask that. That's a very general question. I'll keep that for the end. If you are a new graduate, what is necessary to get in a job in the architecture office? I mean, a new graduate without any experience. What would be necessary for them to have on their resumes? What interests you guys?
For me, it's a willingness to learn, be curious, be hardworking. In terms of advice that I got when I started was to be the person that is there ready to do the work, to be like, yeah, I want to do that. Let me help you with that. And it came from Brian McKay-Lyons, who's one of our teachers. And he said, that guy was Talbot Sweetapple, and he's my partner now. Like, that you want the people that are there to work and to help and to make your life easier. Like, that's, if you can make someone's life easier, they will hire you. I mean, you need to obviously as you work, we don't expect new grads to come knowing everything about the industry. Like, as part of our job is to teach them, but being really curious and excited to work there, that's the biggest thing, hands down. Yeah, for me.
So sorry, I just want to ask a follow-up question to that, because it's also interesting for me teaching portfolio students. So for instance, would you say that you would mostly look at the cover letter and read what they're interested in? Because in a resume, obviously they cannot show that curiosity in just, showing their experiences.
I mean, I would say if they're a student, they should be showing their student work. And then any outside background information that they have. Like we probably will open the resume or the portfolio first and have a quick look, and keep it brief, keep it so you can flip through it and you can see, and we will, if it's interesting enough, then we'll probably read the cover letter, to be honest. Yeah, keep it brief, keep it short, tell us when you're available to work, tell you a little tiny bit about yourself. Like most of the people that are reviewing this, Maia can probably attest, don't have a lot of time, and we get a lot of them, so anything that can kind of stand out.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Kate. Okay, so the next question, once you make connections with the other people in the profession, you can find ways to begin to get local experience. WIA is a very good, oh, actually that's also a sentence, is a very good way of the beginning to doing the networking. We are not able to have actual in-person events, but if you volunteer to help organizing events, that will be a way to make connections. That basically answers a lot of the students' questions on how to find the network, and which we also talked about. So I'm going to move on to the next one. Or Kate, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's a great plug for women in architecture. Here we are.
Yes. So if you're looking for ways to connect, come join us. Okay, so the next question, where do you find inspiration apart from children? Not sure I answered that. I get that, but where do you guys find inspiration?
In unexpected places.
That's correct. Okay.
Well,
Kate,
Kate's about to say something, I think.
Yeah, I mean, our office, I mean, I would say travel, and that's really hard right now because we can't travel. That's such a big one, going and seeing architecture, especially, if you can visit buildings locally, that's great too, because there is great architecture in the Lower Mainland. But seek it out and go check it out. Like it's great. It's nothing like seeing a building in person, because photographs lie. Like I'll tell you, they lie. Like they don't. You'll go and be like, this is not a great building. Yeah, I mean, but I mean, I'll use like our collaborators, like the people that our team are our greatest inspiration. Like it's amazing what they come up with, and where I would say from my staff, that's where I draw most of my inspiration.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Kate. So the next question from Sarah, that's also a good question. As a fourth-year undergrad student, is there a right way to know what university is the right choice for masters?
It's hard to get into into a graduate program. And like I have friends that have applied like year after year and they never got in. So if you can get into one, that might be the right school. Every school is so different. So finding somebody from that school, and because I actually went to University of Calgary and I went to Dalhousie, and they're very different schools, and I actually loved that I got the experience of both. And I would say like the students that start out in BCIT and then go to another school, they get such a good experience as well, because it's two very different schools. Yeah.
Okay. Katie, did you want to add something?
I would say also just, look at the faculty and see what their experience is in, and kind of who they are as a team. It has a lot to do with the culture of the university. And of course, location. I mean, I went across the country to Halifax, so that was a totally new experience for me, and that was great for me to experience the other side of the country. Yeah, that's all I was going to say.
Okay, great. I'm just gonna say something. It's 7:23, so we have approximately 7 more minutes. I'll be reading the questions a little bit quicker, and Kate, if you, since you probably have read most of them and I was reading one by one, if you found anything that you wanted to, point out. Okay, so I'll go to the next one, and then there's
actually, Kimia, before you do, one thing is that for those of you that have not yet done so and want to make sure that you get your learning units for the AIBC, please do put your information in the chat. We need your name, your email address, and then if you know it, your AIBC ID or license number as well. So put it in the chat, and then we will report those. And yeah, there are a couple of questions around mentoring coming
Yeah, I
up.
was gonna say the mentoring is good. So
Yeah.
So one of them is saying, do you have any suggestions on how to find a mentor in architecture? And I'm going to read another one. They're saying, did you have mentors? How did you approach them? Was there anything else that I missed, Kate, about mentoring?
I think those are the ones. And one of the things I was going to say is, again, here we are, women in architecture. It's a great way to make connections and find somebody, particularly if you're looking for a woman mentor. But it would be nice to hear from our panelists, of course.
Okay, great. So anybody wants to talk about if you've had any mentors that you wanted to share how you've approached them, or you have any ideas on, besides these events, how people can find mentors? No? Okay, great.
They're
So
getting tired. I'm going to jump to one. I'm being selective
yeah, for sure.
because we are running out of time. How do your positions to advocate for? How do you use your positions to advocate for women and other marginalized groups to see real effective change in a male-dominated field?
Wow, that's a great question. I would just say, just in my role as faculty and at BCIT, I really feel like I try to encourage the women. I think the women in more of the technical program tend to be a little more, I would say, reserved compared to the men. A lot of the men come in with previous experience in the construction field, and they just have a lot more, yeah, they're just a lot more outgoing. And so I feel like just being there and showing that you know, just being present and being like, you can do this, and encourage the women. That's kind of one of the big reasons why I'm at BCIT or as faculty, just to try to inspire the younger women.
Great. Sandra, did you have anything to add? Because I thought you wanted to add something.
I would just say, you just have to get out there. Just if you want to be in the field, you want to do the work, just get out there and show that. And yeah, rather than don't be shy because you're female. That's what I'd like to say.
Great. Kate G. Shall I run to the last question that I was keeping for
Sure.
the end?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm sorry to the people that you had other questions and they did not get answered. I hope some of them might have been similar and you got something. But since the event is a little bit more about the career path, I think that would help a lot of the students. So I would really appreciate opinions from all panelists. What advices would you give to current undergrad and grad students?
I'll jump in. Enjoy your school experience. I think thesis is a really hard year, but it's that one point in your life where you actually have that opportunity to dedicate your time and focus on one thing and think about how you work through an architectural problem and develop a process that might guide the way that you think throughout your entire career. Very rarely will you get another chance to do that. It's not unlike mat leave. Like just enjoy it. Like just take advantage of it because it's this unique time, and then you don't get anything like that again. It's like, so that's what I would say to students.
Okay, great. And just one other thing, because I saw a lot of other questions. Some of them were similar about being a mom and working at the same time and the balance. Just another question that somebody asked if it's okay to add you guys on LinkedIn, if it's okay for you guys, for people to connect with you. Are you guys okay with that? Okay, great. I've already connected with some of you, so. Okay, great.
In the
Thank you
chats,
guys.
there are many thank yous of various sorts saying how inspiring it's been and encouraging it's been, and greatly appreciate it. And we
Yes.
thank all our audience also for attending and for the great questions.
Thank you, everybody. It was very, very great to all the panelists hearing your stories and hearing your paths. It's very inspirational. That's a way to get inspiration, by the way. And also, thank you, everybody, for the great questions.
Thank you.
And Kate G, thank you so much for organizing this amazing event.
And Kimia for helping host. Thanks all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
everybody.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.